Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Good afternoon. We are from Group 3 of Popular Literature, and my name is Nurul Vidyaharia, and my friends are Binga Maharani, Nugroho Setiaji, Moni Dava, and Aulia Bagus. So, this day we will explain to you a presentation, and the presentation is about popular fiction and the interdisciplinary theories. The aim of the presentation is to get the information about popular fiction and interdisciplinary theories. We have divided the presentation. The first one, we will give you a background about this material, and then we will explain to you or discuss about the main material about this presentation. And we will talk this material about 50 minutes, so please hold your question and we will answer your question after the presentation ends. So let's begin to the first slide. So in this slide, we will explain about the popular fiction and the culture. Popular fiction and the culture are different things, but there's a relationship between them. Popular fiction refers to the various fiction genres which are typically written for the commercial audience, and people also already familiar with this genre. The popular fiction is divided into some genres such as mystery, romance, fantasy, adventures, and science fiction. And people say that fiction is not real and just an imaginary. So, what is the definition of the culture? Culture is a term which includes social, behavior, and norms of the group. And then, social behavior and norms are found in society as well as knowledge, art, music, law, and the others. And the culture is reversed as a reality. So in this slide, we will discuss about the relationship between fiction and reality. There are 5 reasons why there are relationships between fiction and the reality. Number 1 is fiction shows something that universal and unique. It shows something that universal and unique because it can be read by people around the world. It also generally accessible, easy to find, and people generally familiar with fiction. And number 2 is the novelist prefer to make their own world in the fiction. It means that the novelist always makes their own world in the fictions, although the world in the fiction may overlap with the reality, but it has a relationship which must be understood in its own way. And number 3 is fiction is created based on the cultural elements. It means that cultural product cannot exist far from the society who creates and use it. And then the culture can represent a community, and each community may has a different culture. So number 4 is the cultural studies that are used as an observation of the popular fiction. It means that in cultural studies there is a culturalism. Culturalism is a method that uses a point of view and it is based on the people's cultures. And the results of the culturalism is moral value, and social patterns. And last is the function of the culture are as the way of life, as an expression of the way of life, and then as a method of reconstruction of the way of life. As the way of life, it means that culture is a description about the way of life. And as an expressions, it means that culture can express the meaning and the value of the way of life. And as a method reconstructions of the way of life, it means that cultures must have the classification of the meaning, the implicit and explicit values of the way of life. So, the observations of popular fiction must be approached with the way of life in a society. Because of the society, the popularity can occur.
Next is structuralism and popular fiction. Since 1960s, American popular culture begins to evolve, including the works of popular literature. Therefore, the views that differentiate between the high and low culture starts to disappear. At this point, some scholars and authorities evaluate that popular culture is much more serious as a public phenomenon. There was plenty of research which reviews on the aspect about this popular literature. One of them shows that high literature is always been placed above popular literature because the value of popular literature is always seen as something low. Popular culture appears because there's a media that functions as an advertisement. Advertisement here changes something that used to be specific to be something common or popular. In executing its function, the media as an advert maker just showing or communicating the image of its product, but the product itself is not necessarily being touched by them. Therefore, popular literature can be categorized as a mass culture. However, there are two areas of study of popular literature. First, popular literature can be considered as literary works. That is why it needs a theoretical approach, intrinsic as well as extrinsic studies. Second, popular literature can be placed into public consumption media. Based on those two areas of study, the theory or approach that can be referred is structuralism. So structuralism is an approach device that evolved in French around 1960s, with the basis of thought that every human's activity and its resulting product is a product of thinking or perception, and it's not exist naturally. In literary works, structuralism is not only controlling its element but also its totality, because the element cannot stand alone unless we understand fully about its integrity or its totality. While in the context of social and humanity, structuralism views literary works as a public culture. Structuralism is an approach which fathoms a literary text or literary works by dismantling its core of element, that in every element there is a theoretical connection between one to another. Now let's see what is the connection between structuralism and popular fiction. First we have convention. Convention influences popularity. This convention is a system that built or made a fiction becoming something popular. People would know that fiction is popular from the big amount of people who read it or watch it. The gross sales of this production, for example, like a bestseller novel or a movie that put into a box office, are the indicator. The producer, the author, even the publisher who's engaged or involved in the production of their fiction works will notice or see that there is a convention happens in the society. Then this convention will adapt to gain popularity. Therefore, structuralism in the research of fiction works is really accordance with the convention. However, this convention is different from one society to another society, depends on their cultural background. Number two, we have agreement. Since there is a different cultural background, there must be a different belief. And this belief is what made the agreement happen in their society. For example, like there is a movement of romanticism or naturalism or realism. Those movements are happen because there is an agreement made by the community members. Therefore, when we read or we critique popular fiction or literary works, we are bound to some agreement within the works. Because the intention of structuralism is to define one condition that allows the emergence of literary works, including the belief, the agreement, the culture, the conception, even the notion. Next is Saussurean method. According to Ferdinand de Saussure, popular fiction or popular literature can be approached as appropriate as a high literature. Ferdinand succeeded in showing the concept of structuralism in popular literature by creating the Saussurean method. Levi-Strauss used this method in the scope of anthropology discipline. This method also can be used as an structuralism approach in popular literature or popular fiction. And this method will be explained in the next slide.
Langue Parole. Langue is a language system in the form of rules, conventions, and agreements of language users, while parole is the speech that makes the rules of convention and agreement work. Then how do the concept of langue and parole in literary criticism work? Because of priority system given by Saussure, literary criticism must be aware of the hidden principles, conventions, and agreements in the system. When linked with popular fiction, this concept can be used as the basis for gender research in popular fiction that examine system in a given genre. In this regard, popular fiction research is carried out thoroughly and does not fixate it on expanding a particular fiction. Sign, signifier, and signified. To understand the existing system, we need an explanation of the base units of the system. The base unit that makes up the system is a sign. There are signifier and signified. Signifier is a sound impression, while signified is the concept, and its sign functions in two levels: audiovisual level, and understanding level. So, how is this theory applied to popular fiction? Sign in popular fiction convey real objects and create a concept that is not directly related to the object. For example, characters in popular fiction are not real, but fiction. Synchronic and Diachronic. Saussure says that the study of language system can be carried out with synchronic and diachronic. Synchronic is a study of elements that are only in one study area, while diachronic is a study that requires knowing factors from outside the study. The application of this study in popular fiction is that when we examining the narrative pattern of love story, in diachronic we examine the journey of love story in an extrinsic way, that is by considering other factors beyond the fiction. However, in synchronic, we examine love story in fiction without considering factors from outside the fiction. Syntagmatic and Paradigmatic. According to Saussure, words have a linear relationship because they are linked together. It means that the word has meaning primarily because of its position in the sentence. In syntagma, the term gets its value because syntagma stands against something that precedes it or follows it. While paradigmatic, according to Saussure, is that each word will relate to other words through similarities or differences. Binary opposition. The Saussure linguistic model shows that there is a conditioning force in human perception, which is called binary opposition. The basis of binary opposition is the diversity of existing facts and how we interpret its heterogeneity. This theory opens the way in understanding something by making differentiation from what is. An example of its application in popular fiction is when we examining action story, that is, a blur in the opposition between protagonist and antagonist, in other words, insignificant, in which both parties should have characteristic of opposition, because in the action story, the protagonist and antagonist both commit violence in order to attract the audience.
Hello, my name is Aulia Bagus. I'm gonna tell about Semiotic theory and popular fiction. It has been discussed about that the structuralism as a theory, methodology, or method can be linked or applied in popular fiction research. Popular fiction is often seen in two different ways. On the one hand, popular fiction is included in the realm of literature and the approach in researching it by holding on to prevailing theories in literature. On the other hand, popular fiction, because of its popular nature, can be included in the realm of media studies, so that it can be included in the social science. One of the most successful theories linking modern literary criticism to media studies is semiotic theory. In practice, matters relating to popular culture are often approached anthropologically, historically, psychologically, and socially. According to the semiotic theory, which in principle is marker plus sign, as sign. Marker is a concept used to understand or interpret signs. This sign does not exist. As a material object, this marker must be converted to something else, namely the marker, before the marker is shown. This marker is often called so that it seems as if it refers to the reality referred to by the marker. Or in other words, the marker is a concept and never becomes a material object. So it is possible that the marker does not refer to the real marker, but refers to another marker. In other words, semiotics in a systematic study of the production and interpretation of sign, which shows that the marker and sign acquire meaning in contradiction to other sign and sign. According to Charles Sanders Peirce, and as an American philosopher who is also often referred to as the originator of semiotic, the basis of semiotic is the concept of sign, which is not only a language and communication system composed of sign, but the word itself is entirely composed of sign, as long as the sign is related to the human mind. Peirce divides the signs over the icon, index, and symbol. Semiotics, which concentrated on the structure of language, extend this utility to all studies of sign system, and this theory attracts a large following because it is applied in researching other systems of sign and symbol, such as body language, literary text, lifestyle, and other forms of communication. In social life, Roland Barthes is considered the originator of the semiotic theory in the area of social life. For example, social behavior as a sign. In communication science, semiotics is used as an approach in examining signs in a broader of context of communication. Peirce argue that the signs is an inseparable part of the object of reference and the subject understanding of the sign. According to him, the subject is the part that is not can be separated from the signification process. His well-known theoretic concept that there are three main elements to form a sign, namely, the first, representation, which refers to something that represents something else. Second, which is something that is represented, or it called object. The interpretant, namely someone's interpretation of the sign. The theory of semiotics in cultural science. Levi-Strauss, 1967, in cultural anthropology. Gertz, 1973, in examining cultures, says that the theory of semiotics help us gain access to the conceptual realm where the subject lives so that we can communicate with the subject. So, the semiotic approach provides a way to see the logic of cultural as it offers. In the early 1960s, semiotics also appeared in the film theory initiated by Christian Metz. According to Metz, films consist of fragments that reflect cultural meanings. Metz's theory depends on a detailed analysis of certain films, although Metz knows the fundamental difference between language and film. His analytical concept is fundamentally the same. If Saussure's work is a relationship between language, Metz tries to gain an understanding of how films are interpreted through codes or signs in this film themselves. But in cinematic signs such as editing, framing, lighting, or signs, non-cinematic such as custom, dialogue, body language, expression, and so on. Gramsci's theory, 1998, and the hegemony theory network see the media as a forum for ideological contradiction, a place where different acknowledgements arise about the meaning of something, including the media. This perspective suggests the value of the role of the mass media by seeing the audience as an active ideological carrier that intersects with media message as being resistant or rejecting or accepting. Sign theory in semiotics become an approach which means that the message, signifier, and audience, signified, related to one another in the process of meaning construction. The problem of marking and those related to marking is important in criticizing cultural production, representation, and reception. One of the theoretical tools in cultural analysis is semiology or semiotics. In the study of meaning, semiotics is considered as a set of technical assistance in deconstructing a text or film outside the intrinsic factor of the text or film itself. If this semiotic is not placed in one vacuum, or in other words, it is placed in the analysis of the message itself, the semiotics loses its potential and can reduce its potential in giving us the possibility of exploring how cultural products and cultural meaning work.
Post-structuralism. Post-structuralism is an understanding that arises from disagreement with previous thoughts, namely structuralism. Post-structuralism is an understanding that rejects language and symbol as a stable and closed system. What is meant by stable and closed here is that language and symbol only have a single meaning or express meaning, while post-structuralism thinkers consider that the meaning in language and symbol has more than one meaning depending on the history and culture of the reader or writer. This meaning continues to develop in line with cultural development. History of post-structuralism. The theory of post-structuralism was formed based on the weakness and exists in the theory of structuralism. Structuralism is considered to pay too much attention to literary works as an autonomous quality with its structure and system, so that it forgets the human subject, namely the author and the reader. The second weakness is that the works of literature during the structuralist era seem to be for the sake of the literature itself, not for the benefit of the wider community. Jaques Derrida. Jaques Derrida was a very influential post-structuralist figure. He named his method deconstruction. If structuralists see order and stability in the language system, then Jaques Derrida, an important figure in the post-structuralism, sees language as irregular and unstable. Derrida reduced the role of a language which not compile with users. He also sees that social institutions are nothing but handwriting. Because it's unable to force people, as a result, the language system does not have the power to compel people, which according to the viewpoint of structuralist theories is forcing. Therefore, according to the Derrida, it is impossible for scientists to find the general laws underlying the language. Deconstruction. Deconstruction rejects the view that language has a definite, certain, and constant meaning, as does the view of structuralism. There are no utterances or linguistic forms which have a definite meaning. This is what makes deconstruction considered part of post-structuralism. By using the deconstruction method in reading the text, it is hoped that we can see other facts in the literary text, so that there is no absoluteness in interpreting literary works and eliminating absolute assumption and finding new things that were initially neglected. Deconstruction is an open experiment for those who lost and those who are marginalized by the stability of the regime called the author. The relationship of post-structuralism and popular fiction. The role of language is very important in studying and understanding post-structuralism. Through language and linguistic experience, various phenomena and experience of human life can be revealed. We can get this linguistic experience through various literary works. One of them is popular fiction, like drama arts, popular films, or popular novel, and etc. Popular structuralism tries to raise the relation or relationship that arises in the problem of the text. This problem can be formed from the semiological structure or sign. And the subjectivity, like touch, feelings, emotion, empathy of the character of a story. Okay, that's all from our group. If there are any flaws in the presentation, we apologize. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.